Episode 1. This is it. This is our first run of the podcast. Absolutely no clue what we're doing, but we're just going to wing it and see how it goes. So just for a bit of context, in case, any of your audience don't know me, my name's Connor, and that's it.
End of story.
No,
I'm Billy. End of story.
I'm Connor. I'm a PT, personal trainer, and I have a really, really big passion for self-development. So that is kind of one of the key factors in starting the podcast, and also just having a bit of banter along the way. But that is kind of a bit of background about me, where I come from. Obviously, Billy, you want to introduce yourself? You get into an Uber driver's car, you ask, what do you do? Who are you?
I'm never very good at these things. Yeah, look, I'm Billy. I'm a farmer, which is a very strange occupation for a lot of people, and they're like, "You're doing a podcast." Doing a farmer doing a podcast, is a different sort of idea. But that would be my job. But again, I share the sort of same interests that you have in terms of fitness. I always like the idea of personal training and things, but I've never got into that. But for me, it's really just the fitness and self improvement, and just really trying to be as the best that you can be is a big thing that I'm into in all aspects.
I think we both kind of come obviously from a very similar background. We've been friends for a very long time, so a lot of our values in terms of what we're interested in and stuff are very aligned, minus the farming side for me. It's definitely not something I'm into. But
we'll get you onto that one day.
Maybe. Well, I think I did the tractor one day.
Well, you did. Had you driving the tractor, and then remember one day I had you pulling weeds and stuff too. And that was a test for your fitness.
That was a test of a patience. Actually,
that was a proper farmer day. That
and silage as well. I did the tires one day.
There you go. You've had more farming experience than you think.
For anybody that doesn't understand any of that farming lingo. Basically everything I've just described is hectic. So
and hard work.
Yeah. But what I kind of wanted to talk to you today was actually something that I'm kind of like deliberating quite a lot at the minute, and it is the idea of a work-life balance. Even like, is there such a thing? Should there be such a thing? So like, I just want to know what your opinion is. Like, what's your, at the minute, do you feel like you have work-life balance?
Again, relating it back to the farmer, you'll never meet a farmer who says that they have work-life balance, because it genuinely is. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 364 5 days a year. Like, you don't get a day off. So it's probably maybe not a good person to talk to about work-life balance, because I don't necessarily always have it. But for me, it is an important thing. I think it's quite difficult to strike, and as well, it depends in terms of your own life. Like, everyone's different. Obviously, you're self-employed, I'm self-employed, and it's a very different experience of trying to balance your work and your life, because you're not a 9-to-5 person. Compared to someone who does do a traditional 9-to-5, where once they leave the office, they can switch off, So I think it is important to get, but it is quite difficult, especially for self-employed people. Look, it's a tough one. What do you think in terms of that? I know you struggle with it recently. You've been really struggling.
Yeah.
I get the crashes after it, when you're like, I just don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, I know. I'd like, a lot of people talk about, going through seasons, where you're maybe having like a hard work season. And that could be like 2-3 years of like really grinding to like build your business or whatever. For me, my seasons, if you want to call them that, are shorter. And I don't know if that's just an individual thing. Maybe I don't manage my time correctly, but whenever I'm working and I'm in the zone and I'm in that season, I'm just go 24/7. Like, I'll get up, I'll work, I'll do a couple of things I need to do during the day that don't involve work, but pretty much from when I get up to when I go to bed, there will be work throughout the whole day. But then where this kind of started going into my head, or I suppose provoking some thoughts about it, was, am I being as effective with my time management as possible? And we'd actually spoke about this, about being a busybody, essentially. So just doing stuff. So like, for me, sometimes I'll come in here, like, I've got like the dream office setup. You walk in, you feel very motivated to work. I can sit at the computer and I'll do a couple of check-ins, and then I'll go make a cup of coffee or whatever. And then you find yourself like, sometimes just sitting at the computer, like almost waiting for something to happen. But because you're at the computer, you're like, no, I'm being productive here. I'm getting stuff done. But there's not necessarily always, things to be doing the whole day. I could probably condense a little bit better and be more effective with my time. I don't know what your experience of that is, but like,
I think for me, it's more, again, just because I'm relating it obviously to job basis. If you're sitting in front of a computer, it's very easy to do, like you're saying, that busy work where you're sitting there, but you're not actually doing anything.
Have you done that?
Yeah, like you think you're working, or you look back and you've worked for maybe like 8 hours or something. You look back and you're like, maybe you were on Facebook or looking at Instagram a bit or doing things like that, and all of a sudden those 8 hours aren't as productive.
Yeah, they're like 4.
Yes,
really.
And realistically, if you actually are really ruthless with it. But in terms of more, obviously, the manual labor and the farm stuff, if you're working, you're working. And if you're not working, you're not working, which is a very different sort of aspect of it in terms of the work that you're doing. So, yeah, it's a difficult one, but as well as being realistic about how productive that you can be. Yes, everyone wants maximum efficiency and maximize your time, but you also do need that time to sort of take a step back or just to chill out a wee bit, even during a work day, because you're talking there about seasons and things, and, for people that can be 2 or 3 years, that's all right, but you're going to burn out very quickly doing the likes of that. So it's about just getting that, again, it comes back to what we talked about, is that sort of balance at the start, which is easier said than done, because you feel probably like a lot of the time that if you're not sitting at the computer, you're not working, even if you're mentally processing things and trying to work things out. Obviously with this podcast, the amount of mental processing that we've been doing, trying to come up with names, trying to think about topics, all that stuff that you maybe don't think is actually work.
But then I think that is potentially, this is probably my pitfall. And I know this is something that we've talked about. And it's a hindrance to productivity, where I'm by default a perfectionist. Now, I don't always achieve perfection, but I do heavily strive for it. So for us with this podcast, like just for like context, the conception of this idea came about 4 months ago when we started toying with it. We started putting it into action about 6 weeks ago. We could have started about 5.5 weeks ago, really, because we were pretty quick to get off the mark. But there was a lot of things that, we obviously had to come to an agreement on some things of the direction we want to do it. But even in regards to like set design and stuff, like I wanted to have the production value.
Every time I come in, there's a new piece of equipment. I'm like, what's that? That's a new camera, or that's a new light, or all this stuff, because you want to.
Yeah, but I want everything to be, for me, as perfect as I can get it.
Yeah.
In terms of the variables that I'm able to control. Which that carries into a lot of different things, and I don't know if that then, off the back of that, hinders my productivity, or actually really benefits it in the long term, because once it's set, it's kind of like something you don't need to worry about anymore.
There's probably arguments for both. I wouldn't be personally like that. I want things to be right.
That's the farmer in you.
Yeah.
That'll do. It's done.
It's do, like, just in terms of, sometimes I think that, I can't remember exactly what the quote is, basically like perfection is the death of creativity or something like that, when you want something to be so perfect and then you'll not commit to maybe putting it out. So for example, in this podcast, if we're not going to put it out, or, whatever that's going to be, there comes a time where you're actually not going to get better. Sometimes you just have to put it out there, take the positives, but take the criticism on the chin, and then be able to take that and constructively use it to improve over time, and it goes to all aspects of life, but particularly, even like a business context, the Apple's first iPhone was not what Apple's iPhone is now. That's maybe a bad example because they're $1 trillion company, but the idea is that sometimes you just have to put something out there in its alpha form and sort of let it develop and learn from that. So there's probably arguments for both aspects. Of course the being perfect long term, but also sometimes you just need to get started.
Yeah, I think that applies to a lot of things. Obviously we come from a fitness background, so getting started, just doing something, is often better than just sitting about doing nothing. Do you think that do you think that productivity is a spectrum, or do you think it's it's finite? And what I mean by that is, do you think that productivity and what is determined as productive is universally accepted, or does it differ from person to person?
It definitely differs, because your definition of a day where you're feeling productive probably doesn't match what my day of being productive is.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people as well will think that they're being productive when they're not. But if you're critical about yourself, which a lot of people aren't, I think that comes from the fitness aspect too, and always that trying to always be better, always improve.
Yeah.
That if you're automatically in that fitness aspect, you're being critical of yourself, you know, you're maybe being critical of your body, or you're being critical of how you're running, or whatever that is. You have that sort of where you're always trying to improve.
Yeah.
So then when you look at your productivity, you probably look at that through the same lens of being critical of yourself and trying to always be like, I could have done more there. I could have done more. Did I maximize that hour? Did I, you know, that sort of way.
Do you think that's healthy?
To some degree it is, but then it's healthy because you'll always strive to improve. You'll always strive to be more productive, but also I think that it can have a counter effect where that you're never fulfilled, you're never happy, you're never feeling like you're being productive. You know, I think that's part of the issue too. It's difficult, but it's the same, to relate it back to the fitness side, is that are you ever going to be happy with your body? Are you ever going to be happy with the pace that you're running at? Are you ever, do you know what I mean?
Well,
ever happy with the deadlift that you're doing? You always want to be better and better. And like, I think we talked about this previously, you're always moving the goalposts.
Yeah.
It's almost like, you know, I want to run, you know, 2 miles, and then I want to run 5 miles. And maybe you set that goal as 5 miles. And then when you're on 5 miles, you're like, right, I've done that now. What's the next one? And you're moving the goalpost continually.
Yeah.
And then you're probably then, like, I know you can maybe talk about this more, that you're sort of not become fulfilled because you're trying to constantly move that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, man. Like I struggle with this massively. Like, it's hectic. I consistently feel like I do not attain goals because I, like you say, continuously move the goalpost when I'm about 95% of the way from actually hitting the goal. So you never actually take time to celebrate your wins. It's just like, okay, onwards and upwards to the next one. You know, you want to do, like, I think my goal for a long time, just for a fitness context, was, okay, I want to RDL 160, Romanian deadlift 160 kilos. I now do 210, and I'm like, fuck, like, I should have done 220.
Yeah.
Do you know, and I'm looking back at 160 and I'm like, what the fuck's 160? Do you know, like, it's like nothing. And I'm just never, ever, ever satisfied. And again, that has massively, massively benefited my life because it's meant that I'm consistently hungry for more. And again, I don't know if that's a healthy way to be. It definitely, I have to be a lot more conscious of being grateful and taking my time to actually acknowledge what I have done. But on the same side of that, if I wasn't like that, I don't know where I would necessarily be or who I would be as a person. I don't know if everybody has that in them.
No, I don't think so. You know, I think
mental sickness.
It is, you know, it's looking for the next challenge. It's constantly challenging yourself and trying to improve.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think everyone has that, and that's not a bad thing. Some people are happier with certain things or just comfortable, and they're happy with being comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's a different thing for every different person. But for I share that you have with that idea of constantly trying to be better and trying to improve, and like, right, not celebrating the wins.
It's the unitchable fucking itch.
Yeah.
It's like that one you can't reach. You're just like,
just
oh, fucking get close to it. But
yeah, and even setting like goals, like you say, like you're setting a goal of maybe trying to RDL 160, or for me it's to run a marathon, but I'm already thinking in my head, I've already ran the marathon, and I'm already thinking what I'm doing in like the marathon's done.
Yeah.
What am I doing next? And I haven't done, I'm like 4 weeks away from running the marathon.
How long have you been running?
12 weeks I've done in total.
As a like non-runner, right?
Yes.
12 weeks. This is so funny. And okay, 12 weeks in, I think you said to me about the 7 week mark, right? I want to do an Ironman. I'm like,
You're only
what?
sure. I hadn't ran more than 10 miles at that point, I don't think,
Yeah.
probably. But yeah, it's that, like you say, it's that itch, but it's almost like setting those goals, but you're already ticking them off in your head. And it's like, this is a given now for
Yeah.
me. It's like, I ran the marathon, it will happen. And there's 26 miles of hell ahead of me that I know, but I know I'm going to do it. So it is that constant moving the goalpost. But there has to be balance there, and I think that's part of the problem. I think for people who are comfortable, maybe they need to try and get out of their comfort zone and try and move the goalposts a wee bit for themselves to sort of try and improve. But equally, I think for people like us, you maybe need to try and keep doing what you're doing, but celebrate those wins as well.
Do you think that there has to be balance? Like, I know it's generally accepted that everything in society and life is like, generally speaking, things should be this way. Like, you should have a balance. You should spend a bit of time on your own. Do you think that is true, or do you think that's just what we're...
I don't think balance is realistic if you're truly focused on something.
Like, as in a high achiever?
Yes, or if you're given something what you would say 110%, you can't have balance. You know,
Like,
if you're starting a business, you cannot have your weekends free and have your evenings free to spend time with family and do things that you want to do.
So you can't have your cake and eat it?
No, you can't do that and expect the business to be successful, because I can't remember, I listen to a lot of motivational sort of videos.
I can tell.
Yeah, whenever I'm running in
It's like,
particular.
sleep, fuck sleep.
Yeah, in particular, and it's like, I think it was Mike Tyson actually said it, and he was like, was running when obviously when he was in his peak, was running at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and they were interviewers were saying to him like, why do you run at 4 o'clock in the morning? He says, because number one, I don't want to do it, but number two is I know that if I'm doing it, someone else isn't doing it.
Yeah.
So whoever he's going to be fighting against, if he's up at 4 o'clock in the morning doing it and they're not, he's getting an advantage on them. So it's that idea of you're doing something to get an advantage over other people.
Yeah.
You know, in whatever aspect. I'm using the business context. So your weekends, if you're working weekends and someone isn't, you're automatically going to be a step ahead of them. You know,
If you're using your time effectively.
if you're using your time effectively, obviously you have to try and get I hate the word balance. Like, I keep coming back to it, like, but that's what the conversation's about. So that's what it is. What it is like.
There is a whole kind of argument about the should framework, where I don't know if you've heard of this, but essentially where there's the argument that what I kind of just touched on there, that everything isn't a should. Like, there shouldn't be work-life balance. If you want there to be, cool, but like not necessarily should. And that applies to everything. Essentially, the premise is like, live your life as long as you feel fulfilled. For me, that's kind of the big thing that I'm battling at the minute, because I want to be up here in terms of my accolades and my achievements, because I feel like I have a lot of potential that I want to use. And off the back of that, I feel like I should be doing X, Y, and Z all the time, nonstop. But then there is a part of me that, like, whenever, especially, you know, you reach close to burnout, which does happen intermittently, then I feel like I should be taking more regular breaks. And it's very hard to balance, because those are very different ends of the spectrum. Like, obviously you don't take too many breaks with the farming side of things. So maybe you're just cut from a better piece of cloth than I am, and that's that. But I do think the personal, you know, your personal ability to take on board or take different levels of mental and physical stimulus for a prolonged period of time, you know, differ from person to person. Do you think that that's inherently built into you, or do you think that's something you can learn? Like, if someone watching, like, if they have these big aspirations, but they find that they're constantly hitting burnout, or they can't be productive, do you think that these are things that you can learn, or do you think this is something that you are just born with?
No, I don't think you're not born with it. I don't think you can be born with it. I think it's all you're a product of your circumstance. So it's what you go through in your life. If you have an easy childhood, you're gonna be probably a softer person and not be able to take difficult times and hard things as much as someone who has went through a very difficult childhood, whether that be, you know, you hear a lot of people talk about, like, obviously, again, I listen to David Goggins and a lot too in the whole running aspect. He had a very difficult childhood, you know, with an abusive father and things like that. But that has sculpted him to be mentally the person who he is, a lot tougher than someone who had everything, was handed everything as a child. You know, I'm not just saying childhood, because it doesn't have to be. Some people have an easy childhood and then face difficult times later in life. But I think you have to go through those difficult times. That's what gives you mental toughness. That's what gives you perseverance. That gives you that experience that when things get tough, you can basically reflect back on that time and say, I've been through that, and if I can get through that, I can get through this. This is nothing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
You know
100%.
what I mean?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Like, you know, again, because we're coming from similar backgrounds, but maybe different
upbringings,
experiences as kids. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that it's not so. I don't think that you're born with any particular traits. And actually, I don't know if you've heard this, but to reference quite a famous quote. So, hard times create strong men.
I was thinking of this quote.
Have you heard this? Yeah. Strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And then it's just this cycle. A lot of wars and stuff will create a lot of these kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy. But to answer your question, you know, from my perspective, no, I don't think that you're born. I think you're born as a blank slate, and then it's largely your childhood right up until you're probably about 20, 21. So like the entirety of your...
And we're fucked then. Whatever we are now is what we are.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that largely shapes who you are as a person for the most part.
It gives
you the foundation. You know, if, for example, you have a problem with authority, you know, this has been scientifically proven. I'm somebody that has a little bit of a problem with authority. It typically leans into the fact that you didn't like how your parents disciplined you. Yeah. Now, it wasn't necessarily that the discipline was the issue, but it was how it was conveyed. So then you kind of rebel against that, and you're like, I don't want authority. And you find that a lot of people, not everybody, but you find a lot of people that kind of come from that background or that upbringing actually then lean into being entrepreneurs. Because they don't like the kind of the system.
Challenge normality.
So they don't seek that safety because they didn't feel as safe in their youth, their childhood, because there was that kind of maybe a harsher disciplinarian as a parent or both parents. So then they lean into kind of being more self-sufficient and independent, which is like a lot of entrepreneurs do have that background. It's definitely something for me. I definitely think, like, I by no means stretch the imagination was a good child. I was a wee shit, but off the back of that, I got disciplined quite heavily at times. So over the knee, fucking 20 lashings. But you know, it's crafted me into, like, I wouldn't change it. It's crafted me into a extremely driven, independent, self-sufficient person who, you know, I don't always get it right, but like I enjoy the challenge of trying to get it right. And a large part of it is, you know, the fear of not wanting to rely on anybody. Yeah. I don't know if you're, you know, anywhere inclined in the same direction with that.
Yeah, obviously, I think you have to have that to some degree if you're going to be a self-employed person, if you're going to try and build something, no matter what that is, you know, whether it's a business, whether it's your fitness and your body, well, no matter what, that aspect of building something, you need to have what you're talking about there. Yeah. You know, very much so.
That chip on the shoulder.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think as well, look, I don't want to turn this into a science podcast or whatever, but I'm an only child.
Yeah.
So that's again a different upbringing. Obviously, you have two brothers. It's a different dynamic there, and you're the eldest. So there's a different dynamic there where you're saying about discipline and challenging your parents and stuff. Whereas I was probably like the blue-eyed boy who could do nothing wrong. So it wasn't necessarily disciplined that much. I wasn't a wee shit. Like I behaved myself relatively.
I don't know. I had a couple of fights you told me about in primary school.
Well, but the odd time, like I would have got some, but as a whole, I wouldn't really challenge authority and stuff. But I still have that aspect that you're talking about, that chip in your shoulder, that wants
something to
be
prove for yourself.
Yes, for yourself and build for yourself, but then again, that could be based on my parents and obviously my grandfather being a farmer and self-employed, my dad having a relatively successful motorcycle business. All these aspects feed into that. So maybe I got the similar thing that you're saying, but
from a different angle.
As I say, people need to do studies into this sort of thing, I think. And if you want to study us, we're here.
Fuck, don't study me. Don't study me. Okay, so with the productivity side of things, I think for somebody being stuck right now, and they directionally know where they want to go. They feel like they know what to do, but they're not getting there. What would your main piece of advice be to them to start seeing a bit of movement in terms of their productivity or their setup? And again, this is on the premise that they know where they're going, but that's just not maybe happening at the right pace. Maybe it feels very slow, stagnated. What would your advice be to them to kind of feel satisfied in how they're going in terms of speed or whatever, and actually obviously seeing some progress regardless of what background it's in?
Well, you need to get started as the first aspect. A lot of people would be these procrastinators, that all be like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and talk a big game but never actually start putting it into practice. We could have been like that with this podcast, and we could have talked about it, and we could have created the most fantastic podcast on paper when we were in the gym talking about it. But unless we actually got the equipment, sat down, started creating something, we were never going to get anywhere with it. And there's a lot of people I think are out there. So for that aspect, for people who are like that, they just need to take that first step and get going. For people who maybe are already getting started, who are, like you say, maybe moving along, but maybe not at the right pace, I think the first thing is obviously setting a goal. I think you need to set achievable goal. It's going to be quite funny.
Achievable?
I'm going to say you set a goal, but then
Iron Man,
and then keep moving the goalposts like we do. But realistically, set some achievable goal and then work towards that. But also try and maximize the time that you're putting in. Obviously we're left to quite general in terms of what this could be. It could be business, could be fitness, could be anything. But you do need to make sure that the time you're spending there is productive time, but you're working towards that goal. And look, things aren't going to happen overnight. I think that's a lot of people struggle with being realistic about things, and maybe just take for granted they see someone who's done X, Y, Z. There's no such thing as an overnight success.
Well, what is the old saying? It takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly it. And in any aspect, that doesn't matter. The same principle applies. So, I think you need to be realistic and like we've talked about, that we struggle, is celebrate those milestones on the way there. And just enjoy the process. There's that quote, you'll be able to quote it better than I can, but the runner who enjoys the journey rather than the destination is ultimately going to get further. You can quote it better for me there.
So just so it's not completely butchered for whoever originally said it.
I'm awful these things that my mind just doesn't process stuff like that.
The man that enjoys walking will get further than the man who wants to get to the destination.
There you go.
I find that very, very true.
Yeah.
In every aspect of my life. And I only actually heard that probably about a year ago. But it is when you actually enjoy the process, the outcome becomes secondary, because regardless of the outcome, you would still want to continue doing the process. You know, for me, being a personal trainer, working in a gym, coaching people all over the world, I fell into this because I loved training myself. I loved the confidence I got off it. I loved the aspect of just learning something new and then applying it, seeing if it worked, maybe tweaking it a little bit, going back, looking at somebody else's kind of anecdotal experience with it, and I'm just applying all these things and crafting it into kind of something of my own, so that I could get the most out of my training, get the most out of, you know, the results that I was seeing, and then obviously the confidence and all the rest of it. And then whenever I started getting into coaching, I just fell in love with helping people. Like, it was unreal. It was the best, most reward. Yeah, it really, really is. And off the back of that, I've been able to, you know, I say this lightly, because I don't like to kind of come across, you know, arrogant or whatever, but like, I think I've got to a point where I can say I've been successful enough in my career. You know, I can pay for my own place. I've got a nice office. You know, I'm able to go on holidays every year. I can have the lifestyle that I want and enjoy, and that's all off the back of doing something I love. Initially, whenever I started, I was charging, I think I was charging like £11 an hour.
Yeah.
And this was done as an upfront package. So I think it worked out, it was like £166 or something. Like, had to get the £6 extra. And it was, I did that for probably about a year, and I had no aspirations I had aspirations of being successful at it, but I had no like monetary end goal. I didn't think, you know, I'll be happy whenever I get X, Y, and Z. For me, it was just a matter of going in, didn't feel like work because I enjoyed it, which was a big win. And then obviously just enjoying my training. And that got me to a certain point with my business. But then there is an element of it where if you want to take it to the next level up, you do, even though I still enjoy the process, you do have to start taking a little bit of strategy into it. Yeah. And this will apply to the gym as well. Like, you can enjoy it loads and you can go really, really frequently, and you'll get to a certain place with your physique. But unless you look at all the small variables, you know, your nutrition, really dial it in, you know, your training frequency, your sleep, all the things that you know, really monitor, that's when you start getting the exponential reward. And then the process becomes even more fun because you're getting such a big positive net reward off the back of it. Like, your experience at the gym has been a very interesting one, because you didn't have the same love that I did initially. Like,
I had a hate. It was love or hate. It was definitely fucking hate in my aspect.
So for context, I'll just give a quick background and then I'll let you take the reins. But Billy and I have been friends for a very long time. He came to me about 4-5 years ago.
No, it wasn't. It was
3.5.
3.5. Yeah, 3.5. Before, it was in October time, I think. So it would be 4 in October. So
okay,
3.5.
So yeah, you messaged. I remember you messaging me saying that
this, like,
you wanted to get into the gym, and I remember reading it, and I was like, "What? Do you? Surely not." So I was like, "Right, cool, let's do it." Obviously, you got in first. The upper body sessions were fine. The first couple, I'd say, the first year of legs was
year 2, 3. It still
was an upward climb. It's not that the problem wasn't doing it. The problem was just obviously you struggled with it. Like, your body struggled with it. Which I think those sessions in particular probably put you off the gym more. But then off the back of that, aside from your physique, I've seen a net positive in your mindset. Just off the back of that. And I think that, like, anybody that has been through the gym, been through any type of transformation, can attest to this. But like, the mental discipline and delayed gratification that you learn, because again, it's a learned skill, off the back of doing something like that, is unparalleled, I think, compared to most other.
I was the definition of, what you've just quoted in terms of enjoying, about the process, not the destination, because I didn't have a destination in mind when I started. When I messaged you that time saying I want to start the gym, it wasn't that I want to, be a bodybuilder or I want to do this or do that. It was a way for me to get myself out of a rut and a tough time in my life, physically and mentally, particularly mentally. I needed to make a change, and so that was the aspect for me for the gym. It was really just trying to change my environment, and so by doing that, then it really helped me then sort of get into it. Like you say, I didn't enjoy it at the start because it was physically tough, but what I was getting out of it in terms of the mental aspect, when I say mental, I mean just the social aspect for me, just to go in a couple of times, 3 times a week, I think it was, and have a chat to you, because at that time I was quite isolated and didn't really have many, attend social events and struggle in that aspect. So for me, those hours were invaluable just for the social aspect alone, never mind the actual physical training that I was doing. So for me then, obviously then it snowballed. Like say, I never really enjoyed legs to the point now I probably actually do enjoy legs because I'm at a decent point with it, but it was really just having to tolerate the whole thing and just know that what I was doing here was going to lead to improvements. It was going to ultimately get me out of that rut and get me to where I wanted to be. And then fast forward now 3.5 years, and it genuinely has completely transformed my life. Like I say, I've probably never been in a better place mentally. It's given me that. I always had that aspect, that entrepreneurial side, that wanting to be better and that sort of focus. But the gym has completely, basically 10 times that. It's made it, amplified it so much more, and how focused I am now and things. And when I set a goal, I'm like, right, that's what I'm doing, and I don't care what anyone says or anyone who doubts me. That's what I'm going to do.
So would you say that from your experience of training consistently, it has improved your productivity outside of the gym?
Yes. Well, it's improved, I guess, 2 aspects or multiple aspects, but the physical side. So I'm actually physically in a better place energy wise to then be able to be more productive in whatever aspect that is, whether it is through my training, whether it's through work. I am physically in better shape and have more energy, which is great, but mentally I'm in a better place, which helps with the whole productivity side, because if you're in a rut, if you're struggling and things are getting on top of you, and you talk to someone about being productive, it's like, fuck being productive, I'm not interested. I just need to get myself out of this place. I need to get myself out of this rut. And not, things like that don't even factor into your mind. So undoubtedly it has completely transformed my productivity. And again, as well, it comes back to that idea of when you're training too. If you go into, people who go into the gym and do like fucking 2-3 hour sessions, it's like, are you really being productive with the time you're spending in the gym, or do you just like going in there and talking to people between your sets?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that do that. It's all
shots
about
fired.
shots fired. It's all about using your time effectively. I am a completely different person when I'm training and when I'm not. Like, and I don't mean that in terms of like I'm a psycho when I'm in the gym, and like outside of the gym I'm not. But whenever, like, if I have to take a week off for sickness, or maybe it's just a planned in deload or whatever, I don't know if this is because I'm a gym person, or maybe it's just become such a big part of my routine that it maybe stagnates it a little bit. But I definitely notice a huge knock-on effect negatively when I don't go. But on the flip side of that, implementing any form of exercise, and like initially for you, it was the gym. It has been the gym for me. You've kind of started to bring in a little bit of running. Well, sorry, a lot of running.
Yeah.
I've started bringing in a little bit of running. And even, running, as much for me as it's not a big passion, just getting out and doing something has such a net positive, you know, on my mood. And then off the back of that, you know, I want to go do stuff. It just energizes me. It really uplifts my mood hugely. And then off the back of that, even if it doesn't have a direct correlation to productivity, I feel so good after that I just want to go do stuff, which then makes me productive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's obviously I'm going through this myself, but I think also recently you have in terms of injury as well, and how that affects it, because
really bad, man.
What you're talking about there is how good it makes you feel when you do it, but what you have to do is talk about the flip side of how bad it makes you feel when you don't do it. So from my perspective, I'll say I'm doing my long runs. I did 16 miles there on my long run Sunday, but I've been suffering with a foot injury and sort of trying to get over that. And it's that idea, you know, I'm trying to run 3 or 4 times a week here, but the foot is just too painful at times, and then I'm not able to run, and how that makes me feel is so bad, because I am like, and even I've only missed like 1 day, I'm like, I'm not gonna, when the marathon comes, like, I'm not gonna be able to do this, and I'm not gonna be fit for it, and like, I've maybe only missed like 1 training session of like a couple of miles, but it's that you're falling behind, you know. And I know you've obviously suffered an injury too in terms of your arm. You weren't able to train how you were saying to me, like how
mate, it fucks your head up, like because you're just like this segment of time that you consistently allot in every single day just becomes free, and you're like what do people do during this time? Like, do you, like, there's only so much TV you can watch. You know, you can go for a walk or whatever, but like, I feel like I'm festering. I feel like my skin's itching to just go and do something, even if it's not pushing myself to my limits, because I don't think, you know, we obviously enjoy that. That's not for everybody, but like sitting about and just doing nothing just wrecks me. Like, it fucking wrecks me. So it does. Yeah, I don't know again if that's a character flaw or if it's a character.
No, I'd be like that too. Like, even if I'm sitting watching TV, I have to be doing something else as well. So it's like TV for me isn't like sitting doing something.
Back, let's just give me a throwback. So back in the day, you would have been watching the TV here. On the side here, we're playing RuneScape.
Yeah, had to get
and then we had the cup of tea, and we maybe had a notebook here, and you were just doing all these different things. And like, I'm shit at multitasking. Like, I'm bad at multitasking, but I'm really effective if I concentrate. And I used to watch you and be like, how the fuck is he concentrating and all of that? Would you still multitask quite a lot?
Yeah, like you say that too. Like, that is one thing. I like watching football, but like, I don't necessarily sit and actively watch football like engrossed in a match unless it's a really good match. I would have it on, and then I might be on my laptop, maybe editing some videos for Instagram, and then I might have my phone and be like replying to messages and stuff. But I've got all these things going on at the one time. I can't just sit and like edit videos or sit and watch TV. There has to be other things that jump in between.
Because of, do you have like a shorter attention span?
Yeah, I would have a relatively short attention span, yeah.
Always, or is this something like social media has maybe created over time?
No, I think I've always been quite like that. I would get to the point like where things, I particularly get this on things like, obviously during COVID and all too, Zoom calls absolutely wreck me, like, for work. I got to the point where I had to tell people on the calls, like, after 30 minutes here, like, I may as well not be on the call, because like, I'm not even listening now anymore to what's going on. It's like I'm completely away off here, and that was just whatever. I just completely lose interest in things, even if it's been engaging conversation. It's just, I just lose, my attention span isn't good enough, and I get bored, you know. I think it was Zoom. It was quite funny as well, because the time limit on a free account was 45 minutes, which was perfect for me. It's like,
you're like, don't upgrade to
I only
have
a free account. I can only talk to you for 45 minutes and I gotta go. So it worked out quite well. But
45-minute Zooms are long though. Like, they are long.
You're obviously exposed to Zooms a lot in your coaching side of things.
Yeah, like, I like Zooms. I love catching up with my clients and stuff, but there's been a few times in the past, quite a long time ago to be fair, and I ended up being on the call for like 2 hours, and I'm just like, after the 1 hour mark, I'm like, okay, like, this is a lot. Do you know, I don't know what it is. If it was in person, it would probably be fine. It's something about the screen.
For me, being on a Zoom call is not productive. It's not work. in my
No.
head.
Well, like, this is the thing. Like,
meetings are not work, even though they are work. If you know what I mean. In my head, I'm like, I'm not creating something here, so it's not work.
well, yeah, like it's again, it's back to looking busy. You know, if you're doing Zoom calls, right, for okay, we need to discuss this, right? Realistically, if you worked in the same building as that person, is this something that you could potentially just cover quickly when you're in the kitchen or going up the lift with them? That's like a 2, 3, 4 minute conversation. But then when you get on Zoom, there's a whole formality. How have you been? What are you up to? There's the 5 minutes at the start where you're just talking crap. Then you get into it. Then there's like a little bit of a linger at the end. So you could be looking for, you know, something that could realistically be a fucking text message or a voice note.
Yeah.
Is then extrapolated into like this 20 to 30 minute chunk of your day. And then around that, it's not like as soon as the Zoom call finishes, you're straight into work. Then there's like this buffer period where you're like, I'm mentally a bit zapped from that. I need to reset. So you're nearly losing a full hour, you know, either side of that.
Could have been, yeah.
That could have just been like here, could you do this? You know, yes, sweet. And I do find like a lot, like that's a big thing. It's just like Zoom and is a time waster, like so much for a lot of aspects.
And I'm funny too, like as in, just when you talk about voice notes, like when I discovered voice notes, the greatest thing ever, because it was like, now I don't have to talk to people on the phone. It's like, send me a voice note. I'll listen to it when it suits me. It's like that's why I like text messages before voice notes. It's because I can read and reply when it suits me. I'm not necessarily waiting on you answering the phone, you know.
Voice notes are only handy for the person sending them.
Yeah. I know what, I'll be honest too as well. I listen to voice notes in like 1.5 or 2 times speed a lot of the time, just so I can get through them quicker.
Do you ever forget, like this happens to me all the time, I'll listen to it and by the end of it I've already forgot what they've said at the start and I'm like, oh my god, this is hectic.
Especially when they're long voice notes.
Yeah,
like you have to try and keep them short too. Short and sweet, definitely.
But with the Zoom thing, you know, I think and this will apply to literally anything, work, fitness, whatever, if you're focusing your areas or spending your time on things and you're not you're not making any ground, covering any ground towards the goal that you're working towards. So for example, if in a business context you're spending a lot of time doing social media marketing and your business growth is not happening, if you're spending a lot of time in the gym doing, you know, a certain exercise or a certain amount of volume and you're not seeing changes in your body, you're focusing your attention in the completely wrong areas. If you're spending your time in Zoom meetings and your business, like there's nothing really productive happening, then you're focusing in the wrong areas. You need to re-strategize and you need to do that quickly because like time is finite. You know, we've only got so much time, and it can very quickly, like I've been there, it can very quickly, you know, spin around and it's 3-6 months and you've been wasting all this time on completely the wrong areas rather than just actually taking a step back and be like, right, is this working? Has there been an improvement and where I want to see an improvement? Yes or no? Then why am I doing this? And just trim the fat.
Yeah.
Do you know, for training purposes, like for me, that was massive. You know, even, I know it's maybe not, it's definitely a argumentative debate, but us bringing our leg volume down to 1 set on every exercise, after having
it suited me, I can tell you.
Yeah, well, obviously, like I had a conversation with Dorian Yates, who is like 4-time Mr. Olympia. So he had a lot to say about that, and I was like, well, who am I to, you know, this guy's a master at this. Who am I to say that that's wrong if I haven't even at least tried it? And if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always had. Yeah. So my thing was, right, I'm going to try something new here. We obviously tried it, and long and behold, it worked very well for both of us. Like your strength has increased like week on week.
Yeah, it has. And as well, like it's obviously you're spending necessarily less time in the gym, you have less fatigue, but the strength increases, but it has really suited me because of the type of training that I'm doing as well. All the running and stuff, the lower volume. And even to the point now, because we're very conscious when you're coaching me, very conscious of the volume I'm doing across the board and upper and everything, because trying to reduce that because of the amount of output that I'm really doing and physical output. So even reducing the volume on the other aspects, my upper body, and I'm still seeing strength gains at the same level that I was on the higher volume.
And then
it's just fantastic.
Off the back of that, you know, indirectly you're affecting your productivity positively, because then you're getting a lot of time back, which then you can apply to other things. You know, you're then not as fatigued, your recovery's better. Don't get me wrong, I don't think one set on everything is for everybody. You need to know how to train intensely and effectively before you can even start thinking about that. But once you get to that point, like, there's a massive net reward. Again, this doesn't apply to necessarily everyone. Like, a lot of bodybuilders won't want to do that, which I appreciate. But for us, for most people who don't want to do bodybuilding, they just generally want to look after themselves, be fit, and, you know, get in and out of the gym, and then obviously focus on other aspects of their life and have the balance that they feel like they should have. I think, you know, structuring everything in a way where you can trim the fat in all aspects of your life, so that you're just putting all your time into where you need to, you're going to see a lot more quick gains, and I don't mean that in a muscle sense, but you're going to see, you know, a net positive across the board, and that's going to be way more motivating, way more rewarding, and then ultimately back to the point that you had said, you know, the man who enjoys the journey will get to the destination quicker than the man who just wants to get to the destination. You're going to end up enjoying the process a lot more, you know, and then off the back of that, it's a win-win, because you know, you count the pennies, the pounds will take care of themselves. You enjoy the process, you're going to get the reward at the end of it. It's just, and I think you'll know better than me, but I think it's Gary V says about this, you know, about, you know him well, do you?
Yeah, me and Gary go way back. Yeah, he was really the first sort of person I started listening to in that in the podcast whole aspect.
So his whole thing, I'm pretty sure it's him, is about patience.
Yeah, he's massive on that.
So I think, you know, artists and philosophers and all centuries ago would have, you know, really took their time at stuff, because there was no, like, this could be their life work.
Yeah.
Where now it's like, there's so much happening all the time, everything's so quickly changing, that there's almost like a rush to get everything done. And off the back of that, you put yourself under a lot of pressure that might not be attainable for you. And then off the back of that, you are, a lot of times, and this applies to me as well, you're setting unrealistic expectations of what is and can be achievable where you're at right now for where you want to get to. And the reason why I'm saying that is, you know, I'm taking it back to you saying at the start about setting realistic expectations. I think that is, you know, a really, really good foundation to have in someone. Like, if you're struggling to get to somewhere and you don't know, you know, how high or how low to set the bar, it is good to have those initial kind of low-hanging fruit, because it serves as a really good motivator. Yeah. But there's actually this book here, Grant Cardone, The 10X Rule. This is a cracker book. So basically what this talks about is, whatever your goals are, he's like, they're wrong. You need to 10x them. So if your goal is, for example, and it's metaphorically 10x, if your goal is, say, I want to make 100 grand this year, you need to change it and be like, right, I want to make 1 million this year. Because what you'll indirectly do without realizing it is you'll change the input as well, because you'll have a predetermined vision of, okay, what do you think that it takes to make 100 grand this year? Or what do you think it takes to get in this level of leanness or condition? And you'll do those things. But then if you actually set the bar higher, you're like, okay, well, that's going to take more. So I'm actually going to have to do, like, 10x what I think. If you do 10x what you think, even if you miss the million, even if you miss that top level, you're still a leaps and bounds ahead of what
where you were setting it originally.
Yeah. So it's the whole idea of, like, shooting for the moon, and if you miss, you hit the stars.
Yeah.
You know, you're actually going to surpass where you really want, purely down to the input side of things. Because it is the input that ultimately, you know, dictates the output. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody that is struggling at the minute with setting goals, and would you give them the advice to set realistic goals, or really, really shoot up?
You have to have, I think it's a balance of the two. You need, like you were talking about the low-hanging fruit, you need that, because it's this idea that if you're not achieving anything or achieving those goals or ticking them off, it's gonna affect your motivation, your drive, because you don't feel like you're actually getting anywhere necessarily. So I think it's about having those, or you want to call them macro, micro goals. Those, that macro, like you say, that 10x goal that is ultimately, far beyond where you even think you can get to, but that's what you're aiming for. But that you have these smaller steps along the way, that you can achieve that are really going to drive you then. And I know we talked about before, it's this idea of just trying to celebrate every win, all those wee successes along the way and those steps.
Yeah, I need to get better at that.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard to do because, like we said, that you move the goalposts, and then as well, I can only speak for myself that I'm not someone who would necessarily, how would you put it? I wouldn't basically appreciate what I've achieved.
Okay.
If you know what I mean. It's like I maybe achieved something, and to someone else it's maybe like a big goal, like wow, but to me it's like, right, what's next? Like,
it's a stepping stone.
It's a stepping stone. And even if it's some likes in the fitness context, doing the photo shoot and the physical shape that I got into for that, people, that would be their ultimate fitness goal when they start, would have been that. And for me it was like, yeah, cool, done, right. Now what?
Yeah.
And that's sort of not necessarily a good way to be, but you just need to be able to go and tick those things off. So it's a combination of realistic and maybe 10x unreal. I'll not say unrealistic goals, because who knows, you maybe will achieve that 10x goal. It might just take a while. So what about you? What do you think in terms of your goals and what you set? Because obviously you've read that book and you're setting 10x goals. Have you got any on the way to the others?
I don't know about 10x. 10x scares me. I think that's the whole point though. But I've definitely tried to apply it a wee bit. I think I've probably implemented a 2 to 3x to most of my goals. Again, metaphorically speaking. So I've raised the bar up quite a lot. And what I found off the back of that is that all my old goals, I burst through really, really, really easily. So it is an interesting take on it, but like, I suppose it's just down to what you feel like you're capable of putting in at the end of the day. Because this goes back to what we were saying right at the very start. Like, we're sick in the head. Like, we just want all these.
We need help.
Yeah, literally. Like, we just want these like high level, achievements that a lot of people don't necessarily want. Some people might want the marathon, or some people might want the good physique, but we want the marathon and the good physique and the good business and the, like this and this and this and this and this. Like there's a big acclamation of things. But for the people that are driven, or they want to have they want to maximize their potential. They see this golden egg at the top here that they want to reach for, and they know they have the potential to get there. They just don't know how to. My advice would be to really open your mind up to what you think you can achieve, and vastly bring the walls down, so that kind of glass ceiling can expand. All my clients, I say the same thing, we'll set realistic goals to build your confidence up. It's all a matter of trust. You need to learn to trust yourself. Once you start learning that you can trust yourself, and that you will do what it takes to make like this goal. Cool, right? We'll set a goal here. Okay, I trust myself that I've been able to attain that, and then stepping through it, and then the gaps between each one can go bigger and bigger. That's probably the best way to really work towards big goals, so that again they're attainable. You're finding that you're able to have gratitude along the way of like boxing things off. That's going to keep you motivated, and then you're going to enjoy the journey, and you can ultimately, if you have patience, you can achieve a hell of a lot in 5 to 10 years, versus like everyone wants the next 6 months, their whole life to change. Yeah, it's not realistically going to happen like that.
Well, you can start putting the building blocks in to build that foundation in the short term like that, And what you're saying there, even just in terms of your clients, and you'll see it probably more than most people because you're working with them and they're setting their goals. It's like, when you start out on that fitness journey, if it's about weight loss, if your goal is to lose 2 stone, you're not going to do that in a month, but you're able to set those. That's the macro goal. So what's the micro goals, right? Well, it's a pound a week, or it's a pound this week, and then a pound and a half next week, and 2 pounds a week after that. And you're able to tick them off, then you'll obviously see the effect that has, and then they'll actually buy into the process of what they're doing. It's like, well, yes, I can do this, and they're proving it to themselves.
Yeah.
Obviously with your support and your help and your coaching, but then they start to believe in themselves, and then the whole thing's just a snowball effect.
Yeah. It's actually so easy to reverse engineer it. Like you literally do the top goal.
Yes.
You do stepping stones to that goal that are also goals. From that bottom goal, say for example, what you've just said, the pound per week, then you just reverse engineer that of, okay, how do we craft that to happen? In a business context, say it's whatever, I want to earn 50 grand this year. Okay, well you need to earn £1,000 per week.
Yes.
What does it do to do that? Okay, well I need to get 1 customer each week. Okay, what does it take to get 1 customer each week? Well, it takes me to do 3 videos on Instagram and like 50 outreach or whatever that like your business model is, and that applies to everything. I think the gym is the cornerstone of what has taught me all of that.
Yeah,
massively. And it's had such a net positive for me in business, in life, and everything, because everything is so much more attainable when you actually just break it down like that. It really, really is. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
All you can do is your best.
All you can do is your best. But I think we'll wrap it up there. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully somebody took something out of this.
I'll watch it back and take something out of it at least.
yeah, this is it. But look, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please give us a lovely big thumbs up on YouTube. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcast, hit a nice big favorite or heart or whatever the button is on those platforms. I'm not sure what it does, but I think it might just help. Stay tuned for the next one coming next week, and we'll see you then.